So much of the news this week, of course, has been around Nafta. And I wonder, with all of the uncertainties going on, what's been the effect on Calgary and some of your constituents there?
You know, I was having a great summer. At the beginning of the summer, The Economist ranked Calgary as the best city to live in North America, the 4th best in the world. Things are going well, and then NAFTA and then some not so great court decisions on pipelines really made us start thinking about what our role is and where the future is. On NAFTA, I mean, look, there's politics involved, there's a lot of negotiating happening, but we also know that the commercial relationship between Canada and the United States is one of the most important in the world. Canada remains the top trade partner for something like 39 of the U.S. states. And so it's in everyone's best interest to get this right. I actually have a lot of faith, especially now that there's a more reasonable deadline, that without the constant glare of the cameras, that the negotiators can sit down and get something done. So I'm feeling pretty confident about that. And I think that's really the sentiment across Canada. Now, in Calgary, of course, we have a lot of focus on the energy sector, which has been free-flowing energy between the three countries since long before NAFTA. And so we sort of think that there will always be that free flow. Now, that said, a lot of folks said that about cars. And certainly we've had a lot of conversation about the auto sector. So I'm really confident, though, that cooler heads will prevail and that there is a win-win-win there for all three parties.
Well, when you mention cars, I think the tariffs, the steel and aluminum tariffs, how much of an impact has that had on you specifically as well in Calgary?
Not so much on us because, you know, Canada's a very big country. So that industry is elsewhere in the country. But we are a trading place in Alberta, you know, not just in energy, but in all of our industries and in ideas and in people. And so it's important for us to maintain that. You know, Canada thinks of itself a little bit like the Netherlands in the 17th century, a trading economy. So we know that there will be a trade relationship with the United States and with Mexico. Canada has free trade with Europe. Canada is a member of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So it actually is a terrific place for global companies that want to grow globally because we still believe in free and fair trade around the world.
Okay, so global companies that you believe should come to Calgary. That brings me to my next question of how are you diversifying? Because so much of your economy in the past has been centered on energy. And I wonder, it's been a rough few years. How are you sort of coming back from that and then looking forward, diversify to help diversify some of their revenue source?
Terrific question. You know, when I graduated with my undergraduate degree some 25 years ago, don't do the math, I was 9, oil and gas accounted for about 50% of Calgary's GDP. Since then, we've had about $1 trillion of investment in that industry, and oil and gas has gone from 50% to 30%. So we've actually been diversifying all over the place. But we continue to do that, and there are areas of strength where we are encouraging global companies to come in. You know, when we think about immigration, for example, and some of the challenges in the U.S., if you want to bring great talent from India, from China, from Europe, we can do the equivalent of an H-1B visa in the U.S., which is a lottery here, in 2 weeks. And so a lot of companies are finding this is a great place to bring in great global talent. And in Calgary's case, we're really focused, like everybody, on tech and innovation, but specifically on tech and innovation in certain industries. In financial services, where we're a top 25 finance hub in the world, in agribusiness and agri-food, basically just add tech to the end of everything, in fintech and ag tech, as well as in life sciences, in the creative industries where we have a really burgeoning film and TV production sector. In fact, Calgary accounts for more Oscars and Emmys and Golden Globes than any other jurisdiction outside of the U.S. So these are all areas where we've got strength and we are really continuing to build up. And in energy, not only conventional energy, we're also focused in a big way as one of the world's global hubs on clean tech, green tech, and renewables as we start to transition the economy.
Finally, talk to me a little bit about incentives. I know here in the U.S., states and local cities offer incentives or tax break packages to lure companies on the promise that they'll create jobs. What are some of the incentives you're doing, and do they really work?
Well, so I'm also a business professor when I'm not being the mayor, and I will say that I have a very strong view on whether incentives work or not and how to avoid races for the bottom. That said, Calgary has created an economic development fund, seeded it with $100 million to help companies make those decisions. But the much more important thing than that is the cost advantages in terms of what you're paying for labor, in terms of cost of living. You know, in Silicon Valley right now, for example, even here in New York, the cost of living is so high that it actually makes it difficult to retain talent because people will cross the street for $5,000 because they can't afford rents. And so for Amazon, for example, every city, everywhere bid on Amazon's HQ. We were excited to bid because it gave us a chance to sharpen some numbers and understand our skills. So to give you an example, for a company the size of Amazon, if they had built their HQ2 in Calgary versus in Seattle, they would have saved $1.6 billion a year. Those numbers are way beyond any incentive any government could provide because they're structural. And so what companies looking at Canada will find is, yes, there's a little bit of tax breaks, a little bit of incentives here and there, but the actual structural change by not paying employee health care premiums, by paying people less because they can afford to live on less, those numbers are extraordinary and they dwarf any incentives. That said, we do have an innovation fund. Give me a call if you're interested.